Earlier today, we heard from George Galloway as he launched his manifesto for the Workers' Party of Britain. And George Galloway joins us now. George, thank you so much for making the time for us today. I've been reading through your manifesto commitments. They seem pretty enticing. A retirement age of 60 from when you can draw the state pension, no tax paid below £21,200, and free travel for all children. Oh, it's a fairy tale wish list, isn't it?
No, as a matter of fact, until a year and a half ago, it was a 60 retirement age in France, that well-known revolutionary socialist economy. You used to be able to retire at 60 in France. Soon it will be 70 in Britain. And in France, there's a general election at the end of this month, and my equivalent in France is promising a return to the age of 60. Free travel for children on our buses would be a good thing, would it not? It would keep our children safe. It would occupy seats that are otherwise empty. Free bus travel for children is the norm in some areas, but not in others. We think it should be a national service. So there's no fairy tales involved here. I'll tell you what the fairy tale is, that we spend £12,000 per minute of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year on nuclear weapons. Go out and ask the people whether they'd rather have free travel for their kids, be able to see a GP, get a medical appointment at the hospital, or any of the other things in our manifesto, or blow it on nuclear weapons.
I mean, George Galloway, you know as well as anyone that we live in a dangerous world, and you're not only advocating to get rid of the nuclear deterrent, but also to remove ourselves from NATO altogether.
Yeah, well, NATO's the reason we're in the dangerous world. When the Soviet Union promised to withdraw from East Germany and tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev was promised by the American president that NATO would not expand, and I quote, 1 inch to the east, since which they've expanded thousands of miles to the east and are now ringing Russia with NATO nuclear weapons. That's what's brought us to the cusp of World War III, and our politicians are hoping that the public doesn't notice that. But they will notice it if they listen to me.
You're true to say that the nuclear deterrent is not free. It costs £3 billion a year out of our £56 billion annual MOD budget. Pensions cost £112.5 billion a year. They're scheduled to rise, even with the rising age of retirement. The cost of pensions, because we've got more and more people reaching that age, fewer and fewer people in work, and a triple lock increasing these pensions, they're scheduled to reach £200 billion. You can't make up almost £100 billion of spending with £3 billion of savings.
Well, you neatly discounted the cost of the nuclear weapons in the first place. You talked only of the annual running cost. But the cost of the nuclear weapons, the cost of our now bloated military budget, which is being ratcheted up in a Dutch auction between the two main parties as to who can spend the most on weapons and war, is astronomical and about to become more astronomical still. You're going on about 822 illegal migrants landing on a beach. You don't need to be Nelson and turn a Nelson's eye. Where were the ships? The ships were in the Red Sea, in the Black Sea, in the South China Sea, in every sea except our own
George,
sea.
that's a good point to raise. What would your party, what would you do about illegal immigration?
Well, we would be stopping it. And for a start, we
with
wouldn't
warships,
be invading
George
the
Galloway?
from which these people we wouldn't be... Sorry?
With warships, George Galloway, you suggested that we're having small boats coming across the Channel because we've got warships in the Red Sea. Would you shoot down these migrant boats?
Do you want me to answer? Do you want me to answer?
Sorry, I think we've got a delay on the line. Go ahead.
Sure. The Royal Navy's principal purpose and duty is to defend the shores of His Majesty's realm. But they're not doing so. They're in every sea except our own sea. And they are not involved in turning back illegal departures from France, illegal arrivals in England, which then cost £80 a night per person, potentially forever, to the British taxpayer.
George Galloway, by implication,
we've got all these. We've got all these Royal Navy assets. The problem is they're deployed everywhere except defending our own shores. So I was answering you, and if we've got a delay on the line, forgive me. I was answering you that we would not be invading all these countries from which these refugees are coming. But that being said, we certainly wouldn't allow them to leave unmolested from the beaches of France. We paid France billions of pounds to stop these illegal departures. Yeah. And I saw a news bulletin last night in which the French authorities were watching these illegal departures.
George Galloway, when you won the by-election, you said, Keir Starmer, this is for Gaza. Would a win for you now be for Gaza?
It would be a win for peace, but yes, it would be a win for Gaza. I know you don't give a damn about Gaza, as is evident from the contempt dripping in your voice with that question. But I assure you that millions of people in Britain care about the little children and their mothers being torn apart in Gaza, and many of them are prepared to vote to show it.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed. George Galloway, great to speak to you on your manifesto launch day. Good stuff.
You got some vintage Galloway there, I think, some proper sort of oratorical ability that I think you don't see in many members of Parliament, although I do think, I mean, looking at these sums, it just doesn't add up. I mean, it really, really doesn't.